think it's better to start. Good morning. My name is Esther Real. I am currently the Dean of the Civil Engineering School here in Barcelona. So I am very proud to host this event here in our school, that it's also my school, Sergi's school, and Eva's school, and all of us start here as students a few years ago. And I think it's very interesting for us as teachers or professors hosting some event just around the UITP. It's difficult to pronounce. UITP. I am used to pronounce in Spanish. Here in the school, I know that some of the programs that are hosting this or helping this event are also fostering the how do you say it in English, capacity building, some capacity building proposals. So it's interesting to have these capacity building proposals linked with the university. Probably you are going to meet some of our professors here in the school, and I think they are always open to collaborate in some projects, research projects, also academic projects. Our school is one of the most active schools in research in the UPC, also in Europe. So we are used to work in a lot of the projects, and nothing else. I hope you enjoy the day. You have a very profit meeting, and enjoy the school and the city. I know most of you arrive probably for first time in Barcelona. The weather is good, a little bit hot, but not too much. So welcome to Barcelona and welcome to the Civil Engineering School. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Esther. So also good morning from my side, dear participants, and welcome to the second day of our workshop that we have organized together, the European Commission, the World Bank, and the projects supported by us. And let me first also thank Esther Real and the School of Civil Engineering of Barcelona for hosting us and giving us the opportunity to have this workshop here. As she has said, also I'm very proud of having organized it here because I'm a former student myself, and I have to say that when I was studying civil engineering, I was a member of one of the NGOs that started in this school, which is Engineering Without Borders, and it's here that where I started on international cooperation, always related to engineering, and thanks to this now. Today, I'm working specifically on this. I'm Sergio Liete, as you have seen in the program. I'm the head of unit for transport and urban development in the European Commission. I work in the directorate of Carla Montesi that you saw yesterday. And also, as I was saying, we are very happy to, and you know very well, to showcase the projects that we have. The European Commission is funding, starting with SSATP, a project that is managed by a trust fund that is hosted at the World Bank, the Euroclima, and then Mobilize Your City. So I think also the fact that we are organizing it today at the university, as Esther has said, is a very is a good signal of what we're discussing it today, that because it's related to capacity building and training, and yesterday it was a topic that was discussed several times, and it was raised by several of you at the panel that was very interesting, by the way. And I wanted to insist that when we decided to have the second day here, it was specifically for this, because we think this link with research and training is very important. In fact, I would like also to say an example of something that also the European Commission is financing. It has just started. That's why we didn't put it in the program, but it is a program financed by our research program that is called Horizon Europe, and is to develop electrical BRTs all over the world. And we have 5 cities that are pilot cities in Europe. One of them is Barcelona. We work with TMB Transport Metropolitan of Barcelona, and also with this school and the UPC. I think there are some teachers from this school that are associated to this research program. And what is very interesting is that when our colleagues of the Directorate General for Research at the European Commission ask us what did we think about that program, we propose them to also choose a city in a partner country that could also develop an electrical BRT, EBRT, and then they associated the city of Bogota. I think there are representatives from Colombia, and one of the projects that we want to develop under a research angle as a pilot project is the EBRT of Bogota. So let me just recall very briefly what we discussed yesterday, because yesterday we have a very impressive appetizer of what we can discuss today. Because I think you may agree with me that the discussion was extremely interesting. The 2 presentations from Alejandro and from Fatima also set the scene of what we can discuss, and it confirmed that it was a very good idea that we share experience from Latin America and from Africa. Then also the panel, the level of the panel was very high level, and I think not in well, also in terms of your positions, because we are also very happy to have the level of representation that we were expecting, because you are the most qualified and with very high level of responsibility in your respective authorities. And then I think the point, well, yesterday we discussed institutional governance, and I think it was very, very good to see that that we had mainly, well, we have invited actors from the public sector, but what happened yesterday was in a private sector event, because this UITP summit, as you have seen, it's about business. People are there to sell buses, to sell trains, ticketing systems, signaling systems. But for us as the European Commission, why we are supporting you as authorities and public actors of the urban mobility is because we firmly believe that without having this strong public part side on the urban mobility systems, it's very difficult to do business with the companies that you visited yesterday or these last 2 days. So I hope that this help you also to understand a little bit the business. I don't know if you negotiated any deal for buying buses for your respective countries, but it was a little bit the objective to invite you to see this, because it's important that countries or cities in Africa and Latin America are ready to be in a strong position to negotiate with this private sector. That in our case, we hope you will negotiate with European companies. I would like to say also that in the afternoon we have a meeting with European companies that are working in your countries or are trying to expand their business in their country. And we saw that this is a win-win situation, because we think that the European offer is very attractive. We know we are in a very competitive world. We have other markets, buses from China, buses from India, etc. From Turkey, we also could see them. But we encourage them, our private sector companies, to be more proactive in discussing with you, because we think that the European offer can bring a win-win situation. So. And also from your side, I think it's important that you convince them to come to your countries and to attract them to invest there. So the last thing I wanted to say is again, insist on this breaking these silos between continents. We saw that even if Latin America perhaps is a little bit ahead or quite ahead respective of Africa, there is still ways to learn both ways, even from from the European side. Tomorrow we are meeting the Africans. We are meeting the Autoritat Metropolitana del Transport, the authority of Barcelona, and there are things that here took decades to be improved and is still being improved. For example, the tariffication system, a single tariffication system, because we have different operators, etc. And I think also there is a way to share experiences and break silos and not to reinvent the wheel. This is an important thing too. So with this, I would like to thank again Esther Real and the school for hosting us. And I wish you the best for the workshop and the discussions that we will have today. Thank you.
Good morning. I won't be long because we're running out of time. The idea is just to introduce the sessions. It's just to give you a bit of background. We started thinking about this a few weeks ago with Sergio. The idea is first was to bring the Africa experience and gather everybody here at UITP to share two papers that SSATP had completed recently. One of them was presented to you yesterday by Fatima about institutions and public transport authorities in Africa. And the second one was for the next session is to look at informal sector reforms, and we did it in 7 cities in Africa. But again, discussing with Sergio, we said, well, this is a global event, and we know that many people will gather in the same place, and we thought to extend this to Latin America as well. So that's the thinking. So we went through the concept note, we circulated it among our partners, which is Mobilize Your City and Euroclima, and we started the discussion. So we came out with the idea of having 4 sessions. The first session was discussed yesterday about governance and institutions. And I think for today we have 3 more sessions. The first one will be on the informal sector, the paratransit, with a focus a little bit on the fleet renewal. I think we have good cases in Africa. We have Dakar, we have Maputo, and we have other cities. But we'd like also extend this knowledge and exchange to the Latin America. We will have a presentation from Mexico. The second session of today is we're looking how, yesterday we heard a lot how to integrate the informal sector into a citywide public transport system. The second session will cover a little bit this, but more on the traditional way. It's the integration of public transport system, from physical operation and tariffication. That's the second session. And then the last session of the day, we'll look at where we stand in Africa and as the World Bank as well. We recently completed a report on e-mobility. So we thought we're going to share this with you. And then we can also hear from the academic side, because I understand one of the professors of the School of Civil Engineering of Barcelona will be presenting this as well. So this is just short. We have the program in front of you. I'm just repeating what is there. So I would like to thank the school for hosting us. I would like to thank Sergio, Eva, for working hard over the last month to get us all together here. And I would like also to thank the moderators. Each session that will be presented to you today will be moderated. The first one by Eleonore from Mobilize Your City. We have Alejandro from Euroclima. And we have Dibet from the European Investment Bank. So thank you for listening to me. Thank you.
Can you hear me now? Hello. So thank you everyone for being here today, and I would like to thank again the European Commission for organizing this event and making this meeting possible. Thank you to the school for hosting us. I am Eleonore François Jacobs, and I'm a Partnerships and Outreach Manager for Mobilize Your City. So maybe just in a few words for those who don't know Mobilize Your City, we're a partnership between the European Union, the government of France and Germany, and it's really partners coming together to support cities in Africa, Asia, Latin America to transition to sustainable urban mobility. And we do so mainly through mobility planning by developing sustainable urban mobility plans, but also capacity building, advocacy and implementation support. And the implementation support that we do is focusing on three areas that we have identified as really essential to ensure the success of a transition to sustainable mobility. And that is supporting small-scale infrastructure for walking and cycling, improving governance, and reforming paratransit. So this is why the topic of today is really at the heart of what we do. And I'd like also to take this occasion to announce to you that we have just launched a new and improved version of our Paratransit Toolkit, which is composed of 4 different publications that are really made to support cities in Africa, Asia, Latin America to reform paratransit. And so it helps to conduct a diagnosis of the situation in the city, and it offers a catalog of over 50 measures from the most simple ones to the most advanced ones to try to go in the direction of really professionalizing the sector. So you can find some copies of this publication in front of the door or download them on our website, mobilizeyourcity.net. So I will not introduce again the workshop of today, but we're going to have a session now on paratransit capacity building and fleet renewal programs in Latin America and Africa. We will start with 2 presentations giving us an overview of some experiences that have taken place in Africa and then in Latin America. And then we will have a panel discussion with a few examples of from these 2 continents. So first I would like to invite Fatima Arroyo. Fatima is Senior Urban Transport Specialist at the World Bank and works for SSATP. And she will give us an overview of the situation in Africa with some examples. Thank you very much.
Okay, like that. Okay. So bon dia. That's the only thing I know in Catalan, so I cannot speak more in Catalan. But it's a pleasure to be here with you today. I'm going to be doing a brief presentation of 10-15 minutes about informal transport in Africa. This is based in research work that we have been doing in the context of the Africa Transport Policy Program, SSATP, that it is the leading platform for a forum for transport policies in the Africa region, with 4 pillars on regional connectivity, urban mobility, road safety and road asset management, and this research has been done in particular on the pillar of urban mobility that has three main objectives. The first one is supporting cities and countries to develop sustainable transport policies. The second one, it is supporting reforming on enhancing informal transport in Africa. And the third one is supporting institutional strengthening in the region. So just very quickly, these are the type of modes of informal transport that we often see in the Africa region. There is a dominant of small vehicles, usually individually owned, operating under a rental daily basis. And what we see in general, and you see in this graph, it is that overall the main dominant informal public transport in the region are the minibuses today. In most of the cities, shared taxis and motor taxis are also common. Motor taxis are actually not permitted in many cities, although they continue circulating. Motorcycles are growing, and motor taxis are growing today very quickly in the region, and they are already dominant in some cities in West Africa, especially. So, within this, we see that, even if few cities that have relatively, established or re-established good formal transport, such as Cape Town, Dakar, or Kigali, even those cities, they still continue relying strongly on informal modes of transport. You saw in the previous slide this distinction of this table with formal and informal modes. Actually, that distinction is not that straightforward in a way that there is not really a binary distinction between it, because what we call usually informal, it has certain formal authorization, for example, to circulate, or what we call sometimes formal, it has different degrees of informality in the way it operates or it's organized. So what we should retain it is that actually there is really what we see in the region is not a standard or homogeneous informal operations, but different degrees of or spectrum of sector organizations. And the general business model is actually what we call this daily rental, where the barriers of entry are quite limited. It's basically getting access to a vehicle. A driver basically pay a daily rental for the vehicle, and try to maximize the number of passengers that are transported, while pays for some of the expenses such as fuel or other workers like conductors or cleaning people. The current business model have important implications in terms of overcrowd of the more profitable corridors or safety issues due to the unsafe operations in the to try to maximize profit. So with this, in this context, what we have done in SSATP, it is basically we analyze 14 cities in the regions to understand how informal transport is currently today, what is the business model in different cities. And we identified a few cities that actually have gone through different efforts or initiatives to enhance informal transport. And then you can see here the key ones that have embarked important reform programs: Dakar, Freetown, Accra, Kigali, Nairobi, Antananarivo, Maputo, and Cape Town. We have recently published 3 of these case studies in SSATP. You might have seen it recently from Dakar, Kigali, and Cape Town. And we will be publishing soon kind of like a summary of a comparative analysis of all those different reform programs that we have seen in the Africa region. Today, what I wanted to do is just to talk to you about 2 of those reform programs that we have analyzed from what we have called these reform levers. So what we have seen in the reforms program on informal transport in Africa, it is that in general they are formed by a series of different elements that we call reform levers, that are regulations, elements to organize the sector, vehicle financing, operations and maintenance improvements, and supporting infrastructure and services. So the first one I wanted to talk about is the Dakar program. This is a program that started almost 20 years ago, and is particularly famous because of the fleet renewal program that was part of the program that I will explain a little bit later. But it has, this fleet renewal program was actually part of a larger sector professionalization that included at a regulatory level a strong role of CETU, that was the key implementing agency of this program, that established route level service contracts with operators to operate under a minimum level of service in certain corridors in the city. An initiative also to organize the operators. In order to participate in the program, they needed to organize themselves in economic interest groups. And there was a total of 14 economic interest groups that was created in Dakar. Vehicle financing program that included 4 phases, and I'm going to speak a little bit more in detail afterwards. That included very interesting elements of a revolving fund that has allowed actually the sustainability of the program and the leverage of private sector financing from commercial banks in the different phases. At an operational maintenance level, there has been also a strong support from the public sector to enhance the capacity of the private sector to enhance operations. The creation of CapTrans, that it's an institutions that help the management of the operations of the different economic interest groups, and also a maintenance contracts that are part of the financing program that allows for a periodic maintenance during the first 5 years of the life of the new buses. And then in terms of supporting infrastructure and systems, the program did not include significant infrastructure improvements to enhance operations of the new and reform operators. But it includes certain improvements in terms of, for example, bus stops and signalization, etc. And in terms of systems, there was the development of standard fare payment systems. Going a little bit deeper on the dimension on the fleet renewal program, just briefly, I wanted to tell you, I mean, there was quite a strong contractual basis that was developed in the context of the fleet renewal program in Senegal that allowed this fleet renewal program actually to be implemented and quite successfully. So as I mentioned before, the operators were requested to organize themselves in economic interest groups, and there was also the state and the operators created an umbrella organization that is called AF2, that the name translates something like the Association for Financing of Professionals in the Transport Sector. So basically, the program also included an industrial partner that was Senbas, a Senegalese company that partnered with international producers of buses to ensemble vehicles in the country. Other important elements in these programs was MECTrans. MECTrans is a microfinance institution that was created in the first years of the implementation of the program because the operators have issues to mobilize the deposits the initial deposits that were needed for the fleet renewal. So Mectrans supported initially the mobilization of this deposit, and later on also took a role in mobilizing all the repayments from the operators. So the way it works, basically, there is a leasing contract of 5 years leasing contract between AF2 and the economic interest groups. The first 3 months of the repayment of that leasing actually go to a mutual fund that from which, I mean, in case there is non-payments from the operators, the money is actually taken from that common pot. After these 3 months, the money goes to a revolving fund. And that revolving fund has been a critical element in the sustainability of the program. And you will see in this table the 4 phases in which the program has gone through. So it started in 2005. And basically, it started with the support of a loan of the World Bank and IDA credit. On the first phase, an Exim Bank credit also in the second phase. But in the third and fourth phases, the money from the revolving fund was used as a guarantee in local commercial banks to leverage private sector financing. So that actually, and I think Rokaya is going to participate later in the discussion, and probably she will be expanding on this. But I think that just to make a quick summary of the key achievements and challenges on the program. So some of the key achievements is a very successful, from my point of view, financing mechanism for vehicles, and that have had a quite impressive level of repayment compared with other cases we know from the region. There has been quite also interesting innovation in the use of the revolving funds and the leverage of this revolving fund to leverage commercial financing from local commercial banks. Also, a lot of progress on the professionalization of the operation, the organizations in the economic interest groups. And also something important, it is that the program started in Dakar, but due to the success that it had, it was extended to 13 secondary cities in Africa. And also, it's also led to the development of private initiatives that has a very similar basis, but was basically developed by the private sector. Some of the key challenges. I mean, I think what has happened is that the business model that was able to demonstrate, be demonstrated in the first 2 phases and were able to leverage money in the third and fourth phases has been eroding with time. That business model has been eroding because the worsening of the operating conditions in Dakar, more congestion, more difficult to circulate, less rotation of buses. There has been also a quite limited increase and adjustment of fares. So all these, together with some constraints in the supply also of drivers, led actually to an increase in non-compliance of the level of service. And at the same time, another factor that affected competitiveness, it was the strong competition of what so-called informal operators that are car rapids or the growing number of motor taxis that we see in the city. Also, something we are seeing, it is a diminishing control of the economic interest group with the members, and that is especially true after the 5 years. After 5 years that the leasing agreement finished. During the first five years, there is a much more strong engagement, but afterwards, that there is a stronger distance. There is also important challenges in the application of the labor regulations, the application of contracts. There is still a lot of informal workers, drivers in the sector, and there has been also some issues in maintenance and the lack of supporting infrastructure like depots, for example. So all of this in a lot of detail we are going to be publishing in SSITP very soon on a specific publication of fleet renewal that we are documenting on 4 countries in the Africa region. Just very briefly just to give you another example, a flavor, another example, in Maputo, a similar reform program on the basis that in which the government established road-level service contracts with operators. They created an organizing authority, AMT, that you have met Antonio Matos during this week. And the government requested operators to organize themselves in cooperatives to be able to get access to the vehicles and to sign a leasing agreement between, initially it was the transport fund, and after it was the AMT. And there was also a program for periodic maintenance and systems and infrastructure that was put in place to enhance the system. So just very quickly, some key lessons from the program, and I think I only have 1 minute to finish. So what we have seen from all these reforms, it is that at the end, they always can create some kind of changes on the business models, the viability and the margins in the system. And here we are talking about several business models, the business model of the financiers, of the drivers, of the owners, etc. So really changing the power balance in the system is extremely important to think of when designing this program. The need to learn and adapt. So what we have seen in general from these programs, it is that, even with the best thinking behind and the best studies, there are things that don't work when they are implemented, and there is really the need to really learn and adapt the programs as they are implemented. Important role of government to give direction, but also a very important role of the private sector, and more we are seeing the opportunities of more bottom-up approach, or with the private sector take a leading role with a guiding support from government. And finally, an important also role of capacity building, both of government and private sector. I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fatima. So we will now hear a second presentation from Abel Lopez, who is also Senior Transport Specialist at the World Bank. And he will give us an overview of the experiences with fleet renewal in Latin America.
Hello, thank you. Just for the benefit of the LAC delegation, I will switch to Spanish. The slides will be in English. If you have any question in English, obviously you can ask it. Let me know when you are ready with the... Perfect. Bueno, primero que nada, muchas gracias por la invitación. La verdad, un gusto estar aquí. La experiencia que traemos es una experiencia de posiblemente más de 10 años trabajando en el tema de financiamiento, particularmente en México, pero muy también concentrado en América Latina. Lo que hemos visto en los últimos 10 años es un esfuerzo enorme por una renovación de flota un esfuerzo enorme en la renovación de flota a partir de varias implementaciones tipo BRT que se han hecho, Bus Rapid Transit, en los últimos 20 años. Lo que hemos visto es una evolución muy grande en los sistemas BRT que existen a nivel mundial, no solamente en países en vías de desarrollo, sino también en países desarrollados. Pero también hemos visto esfuerzos un poquito más aislados que no tienen que ver con una formalización como tal del servicio en algunas ciudades en México que están un poquito más avanzadas, y ahorita voy a explicar la manera en cómo han podido renovar la flota en estas ciudades. Todas estas intervenciones han seguido un esquema en su gran mayoría a partir de lo que se hace con el éxito de Transmilenio y después con lo que sigue en un esfuerzo muy importante en Ciudad de México con su primer BRT en una de las avenidas más importantes. La manera en cómo se implementa este tipo de proyecto es a partir de lo que se conoce como un project finance, un financiamiento al proyecto. Esa es la manera tradicional como se empezó a a hacer estas implementaciones, y básicamente lo que funciona con un Project Finance es cómo podemos estructurar un proyecto de manera tal que sea la concesión que se le va a dar al operador del servicio de transporte, BRT, la que pueda ser sujeta, vamos a llamarlo así, o pueda quedar como en garantía del crédito para la compra de los autobuses. El tipo de intervenciones que hemos tenido en América Latina principalmente han seguido un proceso estandarizado en donde hemos visto varios requerimientos que han tenido que estar digamos, en el lugar de implementación para poder estructurar estos proyectos. Lo primero que hemos tenido que ver es, y un requerimiento, y lo discutimos en la sesión de ayer, es la creación de una autoridad de transporte. Ahorita voy a dar el detalle del por qué es importante la autoridad de transporte. Generalmente en todas las ciudades donde ha visto una intervención tipo BRT o una sustitución de flota, ha tenido que haber un cambio, han tenido que haber cambios regulatorios y cambios institucionales. En muchos de las ciudades en donde hemos trabajado, estábamos hablando de un transporte informal, semiformal, en donde básicamente operaban con un permiso, que básicamente el permiso no era un permiso que permitía apalancarse con una institución comercial bancaria. Por supuesto, para todos los proyectos siempre habían estudios técnicos y generalmente en las intervenciones lo que veíamos era una infraestructura dedicada con tecnología, requerimientos de tecnología, principalmente para lo que tiene que ver con el sistema de pago y el sistema, por supuesto, de monitoreo y control de la flota. La manera como se estructuraban también en la parte financiera era a partir de un fideicomiso o de un trust fund, que básicamente lo que iba a hacer o lo que hace actualmente es recoge todas las tarifas que se pagan por parte de los usuarios, y es este trust o este fideicomiso el que hace la distribución de los pagos a los diferentes acreedores, desde la parte del CAPEX hasta la parte del OPEX. Y por supuesto, una parte muy importante y de lo que también se ha hablado en estas sesiones es cómo podríamos llegar a tener un gobierno corporativo adecuado en las empresas de transporte para poder hacer sujetos de créditos a los operadores individuales. Tenían que crear empresas de transporte o las tienen que crear sociedades anónimas para que éstas puedan ser sujetas de crédito. En algunos países esto ya está, en otros países esto está menos avanzado. Y la razón es muy simple. La autoridad de transporte responde a una necesidad de asegurar que se va a proveer de un servicio con estándares, y esto es un requerimiento de la banca comercial. Te dicen quién va a administrar o a supervisar de que el servicio se esté operando con ciertos estándares. Los cambios legales tienen que ver con la autorización que va a tener el operador para poder dar el servicio en un área dada. La parte de los estudios técnicos son muy importantes para saber cuál es el ingreso que se va a esperar en un servicio o en una ruta particular y cuáles son los gastos que se van a tener. No solamente los gastos de operación, sino también los gastos de capital. La infraestructura dedicada resulta ser muy importante, y sobre todo quién va a usar esta infraestructura dedicada. Los bancos son muy, pero muy quisquillosos, es una palabra en español, en el cual dicen no puede haber una competencia, lo que le llaman a ellos una competencia paralela en el corredor. Tiene que haber una exclusividad en el corredor, y esto, la infraestructura dedicada, sirve mucho para esto. La parte de la estructura financiera, la parte del fideicomiso o el trust, es importante por el tema del manejo de los propios recursos que genera el proyecto, y la parte del operador y su gobierno corporativo es que, como toda buena empresa o como toda empresa formal, tiene que tener ciertos procedimientos para poder demostrar que están están teniendo una buena contabilidad y un buen manejo financiero. A pesar de todos los esfuerzos que se han hecho en muchas de las ciudades en América Latina, la realidad es que hemos visto que casi todos los sistemas de transporte han sufrido o sufren de problemas financieros. Algunos lo sufren de manera inmediata, otros lo sufren a los 6 meses, al año y demás. Y la razón es muy simple. Siempre existe en estos sistemas un periodo de lo que se le conoce de maduración del sistema para alcanzar los niveles de demanda esperado. Y esto muchas veces lleva tiempo, lleva cambios que se tiene que hacer y la importancia de tener una autoridad. Por otro lado, lo que hemos visto es que las economías a escala de tener empresas de transporte no necesariamente se alcanzan y no necesariamente son suficientes para cubrir los costos de formalización, que entre otras cosas incluye el pago de impuestos y el pago de seguridad social para los trabajadores de la empresa. Y la última parte es la parte del gobierno corporativo, que no necesariamente madura a la misma naturaleza o a la misma velocidad que el sistema de transporte debería de madurar. Cuando viene el COVID, y esta es una frase que yo repito mucho con mis clientes, con mis contrapartes, es que cuando llega el COVID lo que hemos visto es que básicamente aquellas estructuras que eran relativamente poco bancables terminaron o llegaron a ser no bancables. El COVID le dio un impacto a los ingresos de los sistemas y esto nos pone en nuevos retos. ¿Cómo se ha venido financiando la flota de autobuses? Bueno, hay que recordar que los bancos grandes, los bancos internacionales, difícilmente consideran a los sistemas de transporte público bancables. Esa es una realidad. Para ellos siguen siendo proyectos pequeños y bastante complejos. El financiamiento generalmente viene, por un lado, de las financieras, de las armadoras de autobuses, de ahí viene el financiamiento, pero con varias, por un lado tiene sus ventajas porque conocen al cliente, pueden tener al autobús o al bus como un colateral, pero generalmente estas financieras tienen un acceso al capital bastante caro. Ahí tenemos un reto. Por otro lado, tenemos los bancos locales, quienes conocen el mercado, conocen a los operadores, pero generalmente los bancos locales también tienen un costo de capital caro y únicamente estaría disponible para aquellos que ya tienen operadores que ya tienen cierto historial crediticio trabajando con ellos. Una de las desventajas de estos dos tipos de financiamiento es que son financiamientos de corto plazo, 6, 8 años, no más allá, y con periodos de gracia muy pequeños que no permiten precisamente a un sistema de transporte madurar. ¿Cuál es el verdadero problema que tenemos con este tipo de sistemas? El verdadero problema tenemos, al menos en la parte del transporte informal, es que la mayor parte del riesgo comercial se queda el operador con él cuando las medidas para mitigar este riesgo debería de venir por parte del público. Un ejemplo muy claro, y para un banquero lo primero que dicen es precio por cantidad, esa es mi fórmula. Y cuando tenemos la cantidad que es la demanda estamos de acuerdo, pero cuando el precio lo determina la autoridad tenemos un problema. Las tarifas no necesariamente se ajustan a los niveles en los que requiere por los temas de inflación. Todas las ventajas y desventajas que tenemos con los sistemas formales, informales, semi-informales, generalmente lo que tenemos en estos sistemas es que si bien por un lado el sistema informal tiene muchísimas ventajas, la realidad es que cuando vemos el lado donde está el lado izquierdo de la pantalla o el lado derecho para ustedes de la pantalla, generalmente toda esa lista de cómo operan y cómo manejan el negocio tiene un impacto muy fuerte en la evaluación crediticia de estos sistemas y por esas razones que no son bancables. En los últimos años, y ya para terminar, hemos visto una nueva forma de tratar de sobreponer los problemas que tenemos con el financiamiento de la flota en los sistemas de transporte público. Y lo que hacemos es, tratamos de decir cómo podemos separar la compra de los autobuses con la operación de los autobuses, y generalmente los esquemas van estructurados hacia que ya sea que el gobierno los compre directamente o bien el gobierno saca un contrato separado que va a tener una fuente de pago diferenciada con un proveedor de flota internacional en una licitación pública, y es el que va a poner la flota a disposición de un operador. Esa es la manera en cómo se ha venido trabajando en algunas ciudades, como en el caso de Bogotá, como en el caso de Santiago de Chile, y lo estamos viendo en algunas ciudades también en México. La dificultad que tiene este tipo de estructuras es que requiere un nivel de sofisticación bastante alto, una preparación por parte de la autoridad bastante alta para poder estructurar estos dos contratos con los incentivos que se requieren. La última forma que en este momento estamos analizando para el caso de México es una estructura en la cual tenemos un fondo de infraestructura que lo que hace es que aporta capital a un vehículo de propósito especial junto con la ciudad beneficiaria, y es este vehículo de propósito especial, el que dice en la parte de en medio SECADE, quien iría al mercado de capitales a buscar el financiamiento para poder adquirir la flota. Es este vehículo que es manejado por un fund manager, quien lo que va a hacer es seleccionar al operador, y a partir de las tarifas que se van a pagar y de subsidios que tendrían que venir, es como se estarían pagando a los inversionistas. Estas estructuras nuevamente son estructuras relativamente nuevas, estructuras que se están explorando, pero que estructuras que uno podría decir que tienen un apetito no solamente para los bancos comerciales un poquito más grandes o de presencia nacional, sino también para un grupo de inversionistas como los fondos de pensión, que podrían tener unas tasas de interés y unos periodos de, digamos, de prepago de los créditos de una manera más amplia y más adecuada para el sistema de transporte público. Finalmente, lo que quiero decir con todo esto es que una renovación de la flota requiere de algún tipo de formalización, por lo que hemos discutido. La parte de la estructuración de los proyectos y la alocación o la distribución de los riesgos de manera adecuada puede ser importante, pero también requiere de una madurez del mercado financiero en el país en el que nos encontremos. Y finalmente, todas las estructuras nuevas van a requerir de un grado de sofisticación y de mucha capacidad técnica que tenemos que dar a nuestras contrapartes, a nuestros clientes, para poder estructurar este tipo de proyectos. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much, Abel. So now I would like to kindly ask the panelists to please join me here. We have Rokaya Dieng, who is the head of the Division on General Studies and Technical Studies at CETUD, the Transport Authority in Dakar, Senegal. John-Marc Mwanika, who is chair of ITF Urban Transport Committee in Kampala, Uganda. Gustavo Renaldi, Director of Environmental Impact at the Ministry of Transport in Argentina. And Diego Cruz, CFO of the Public Transport Authority of Santiago of Chile. I'm not sure if Salvador Medina has arrived, but I don't think so. In that case, that will be it for now. So thank you all for being there. Do we have enough seats? Yeah. So we will have a little bit under an hour, and we have great panelists with great stories to share, great experiences. It's quite a short time, but I think these days were really thought of as a workshop. So please continue the conversation after the panel. We will have a break. We will have, I hope, some time for a Q&A as well. But if you want to see that as a sort of a teaser, where you hear a little glimpse of what has been achieved in these cities or countries, and then continue the conversation after the panel. So I would like to start first with one question for all of you, and I would ask you to maybe answer briefly in about 3 minutes to explain to me the most important factors that contributed to the sustainability of paratransit reform in your city. So just give us a little bit of context of what has been achieved, as brief as possible, and then we will take another round of questions for each of you. Would you like to start, maybe?
Yeah, of course.
You have to
I will speak Spanish too. Yeah. Yo soy de Santiago de Chile. Nosotros hemos tenido una gran renovación de flota en los últimos años, donde incluso hemos incorporado 2.000 buses eléctricos. De una flota de alrededor de 7.000 buses, hoy en día 2.000 son eléctricos gracias a todo este proceso de renovación de flota que hemos tenido. ¿Qué es lo que yo resalto del proceso? Primero es que tenemos, el Estado es quien ha fomentado la renovación de flota, el Estado ha sido el que ha separado los bienes del operador mismo, o sea, hoy, como recién explicaba en la presentación, los operadores de transporte no son los dueños del bus, sino que el Estado se los pasa para que ellos operen. El cambio de paradigma ha ayudado mucho a que como se hacía necesaria una renovación de flota, y ningún operador tenía incentivos a renovarla porque se les iba a acabar la concesión, entonces el Estado decidió que nosotros íbamos a proveer la flota y así separábamos los activos de los pasivos del operador.
Thank you very much. Rokaya, would you like to go next?
Merci Éléonore, bonjour à tous. Je vais m'exprimer en français pour être un peu plus à l'aise. Donc, comme Fatima l'a expliqué tout à l'heure lorsqu'elle décrivait le contexte, en fait, au Sénégal, nous avons initié en 1996 une réforme du secteur des transports qui a abouti à la création du CETUD en 1997. Donc, un des piliers de cette réforme, c'était de professionnaliser le secteur artisanal. Donc, en 2001, nous avons mis en place l'association de financement des professionnels des transports, AFTU, qui, en partenariat avec le CETUD, avons lancé le programme de renouvellement de la flotte en 2005. Donc, les objectifs de ce programme, c'était de renouveler la flotte de car rapides et de Ndiagandiaï, de professionnaliser les acteurs, mais aussi de renforcer leurs capacités. Donc, le renouvellement a été mis en place à travers l'AFTU, qui est constitué de 14 GIE, groupements d'intérêt économique, qui eux-mêmes regroupent plus de 2000 opérateurs. Donc, le secteur artisanal au Sénégal est très atomisé avec des opérateurs qui possèdent en moyenne 1 à 2 véhicules. Donc, aujourd'hui, AFTU exploite plus de 60 lignes à travers des conventions de concession signées entre les GIE et le CETUD. Et dans le cadre de ce programme, nous avons mis en place un dispositif d'accompagnement avec la création de structures telles que MECTRANS, comme le disait Fatima. Donc, c'est la mutuelle d'épargne et de crédit qui apporte un soutien financier aux opérateurs et les aide à mobiliser l'apport initial pour l'acquisition du véhicule. Nous avons également CapTrans qui fournit une assistance dans la gestion des ressources, la mutualisation de ces ressources, et il y a également Transvie qui est la mutuelle sociale. Donc, aujourd'hui, nous avons renouvelé plus de 2300 cars rapides Ndiagandiaï à Dakar et mis en place un programme fort de renforcement de capacité. Donc, sur le plan financier, donc, la première phase du programme avait été financée par la Banque mondiale, donc, à travers un prêt à l'État du Sénégal. Donc, ce prêt avait été rétrocédé à l'AFTU, donc, qui, par un mécanisme de crédit-bail, a permis à ces opérateurs de disposer de véhicules. Donc, sur la base de l'expérience de Dakar, donc, je pense qu'il y a nécessité de réunir au moins 3 conditions pour assurer la pérennité de ces réformes. La première étant d'avoir un modèle financier solide qui puisse garantir l'équilibre aux opérateurs. La deuxième étant de mettre en place une organisation cohérente avec des dispositifs d'accompagnement et un programme de renforcement de compétences. Et le troisième point, je dirais la mise en place d'un cadre de concertation qui puisse garantir un climat de confiance entre les opérateurs et l'État et pour qu'ils puissent s'approprier le programme. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. So now, Gustavo, would you like to go next?
Bueno, buenos días a todos y a todas. Primero, gracias por la invitación a la universidad. Realmente es un gusto estar en esta universidad. Me gustaría reflexionar un poco con ustedes sobre una cuestión tal vez preliminar a todo esto, ¿no? Estamos hablando de financiamiento para comprar nuevas flotas de buses. En Argentina tenemos un problema importante de acceso al crédito. Lo cierto es que hoy no hay un acceso fluido al crédito. Tampoco la realidad es la misma que en Chile. Lo cierto es que hay particularidades de la industria automotor, donde existe una industria automotor de producción de carrocerías que se vería tal vez afectada por diferentes variables de la importación de vehículos. También existe sectores de producción de partes de vehículos que se verían tal vez afectadas. Es un sistema que tenemos que tener en cuenta a la hora de pensar renovación de flotas, ¿no? No se trata solamente de recibir fondos en préstamo también. Lo cierto es que no son fondos regalados. En general el financiamiento no es barato, o sea que tiene que ser usado inteligente y responsablemente. Y tampoco se trata de comprar solamente, tratar de comprar colectivos, sino tratar de buses, sino que de tratar que esa renovación de flotas sea un impulso para mejorar la calidad de vida de las personas y el desarrollo industrial y el desarrollo productivo de los países, ¿no? Si no, lo que estamos viviendo en Argentina tal vez sea un nuevo proceso extractivista donde las grandes potencias lleven nuestro litio y nos terminen vendiendo las baterías de los colectivos. Tenemos que pensar en salir de esas ideas tal vez y agregarle valor productivo, valor de producción dentro de la región, poder avanzar en la producción de buses, poder trabajar. Lo cierto es que tampoco pretendemos en la región producir un bus completo, porque la realidad es que hoy la industria automotriz no funciona así. Ningún país produce un colectivo completo. Unos venden una parte, otros venden otra, otros venden las soluciones tecnológicas, pero creo que tenemos que discutir esa integración para que todos los países que hoy están dentro del radar puedan aprovechar de eso también, esta renovación de flotas. Y después pensar también en cómo impulsa las tecnologías, ¿no? Cómo esto se acompaña con un desarrollo tecnológico y de desarrollo de mano de obra y de capacidades locales. No podemos pensar en seguir comprando en la región vehículos eléctricos importados sin construir capacidad técnica local que pueda después hacer las reparaciones o que pueda mejorar los controles, si no siempre terminamos dependiendo de la persona que nos vende o la empresa que nos vende los colectivos, o los buses, perdón, pero tenemos que pensar eso en la renovación. Tenemos que pensar también que un bus eléctrico cuesta hoy, en Argentina por lo menos, casi 2,5 veces más que un colectivo diésel. ¿Cuáles son esas causas? ¿Por qué tenemos que ir hacia eso? Pensar también sistémicamente, si vamos a comprar buses eléctricos, cuál va a ser el beneficio y si el sistema eléctrico está preparado para eso. Me estoy extendiendo un poquito más, pero después les dejo el lugar, disculpen. Y también creo que considerar, les decía, que no solo se trata de comprar colectivos, que no se trata de comprar nuevos buses, sino también trabajar en su operación, en ver cómo hoy el cambio climático nos está afectando realmente, tratar de salir. Un minuto me dice Eleanor, pero nada, quería pensar un poco fuera de la estructura esta de financiar buses, comprarlos, sino de pensar también en cómo los operamos, en cómo funciona el sistema de operación de esos buses, cuáles son los impactos, más allá del sistema también, el impacto productivo que tiene la compra de un bus y que puede tener, que tenemos que aprovechar esas potencialidades para que lo tenga. no solamente pensar en incorporar flotas, sino en pensar en incorporar flotas para que eso al final del día termine mejorando el desarrollo productivo regional, tanto de los países africanos como de los países de la región latinoamericana, y mejorar al final del día la calidad de vida de nuestras poblaciones, ¿no? Me parece que hoy está la oportunidad que debemos aprovechar en tratar de unirnos y trabajar juntos en eso, y no ser solamente importadores de colectivos, sino que trabajar en esa cadena productiva de la movilidad eléctrica es un desafío que nos llama, sobre todo para mejorar realmente la calidad de vida de las personas que más vulnerables son en nuestras sociedades, ¿no? Generar nuevos empleos, generar empleos de calidad en tecnología para los jóvenes, generar nuevas oportunidades. Creo que es la oportunidad que nos da la hora en torno a la movilidad eléctrica y en esta discusión, y es una oportunidad fuerte para la región, para los países del sur global, ¿no? Me parece que África, que Latinoamérica tenemos un desafío por ese lado y lo tenemos que enfrentar. Disculpas por haberme extendido, después vuelvo en todo caso. Gracias.
Thank you very much. Now, John Mark, I think you're bringing a little bit of a different perspective also to the question, so please go ahead.
Thank you, sister, and thank you, everybody. I just want to share, I think, two key issues that we are doing in Kampala. Some 2.5 or 3 years ago, we got support from AFD, and I want to extend our thanks to AFD through Mustafa and Fatuma and yourselves and the EU. They supported us to do a study that was supposed to prepare Kampala for mass transport. And this study brought together some 3 also institutions. We had Transtech, we had ODA, we had GLI, and we had colleagues from Cairo with different expertise. ODA was bringing in the expertise of dealing with regulation and policy. Then we had the Cairo guys and Transtech were bringing issues around street usage and mapping, and then ourselves were bringing knowledge of dealing and working with the actual informal workers. Now, what happened is that we had several key outputs, but there's one that I'd like to speak about that is contributing or supporting policy and institutional framework, and that is the establishment of what we call the consultative forum. And behind there I have my sister, Amanda, whom I'll ask when you open to speak about this, because what we did is we established this forum, and because of the animosity that was there between, first of all, even the urban authorities themselves, Kampala is surrounded by 2 big districts. There's one called Wakiso that almost surrounds 80% of Kampala, and then Mukono. And about 90% of people who do business in Kampala stay in those districts. And therefore, the municipalities and administration of those districts didn't want this thing like of a big brother of KCC, Kampala City Council, dictating things around them, especially around revenue collection. Because the strategy they were using was to contract and give tenders to individuals and some companies to collect for the local councils, including Kampala City Council, revenues, because this to something very, very difficult. You had to be militaristic to collect, which the urban councils and cities could not really. It would be expensive to just form a para-legal entity to collect tax. So they would tender out. Unfortunately, it brought in or fed into what we looked at as animosity. The authorities were not speaking to each other. Even the associations of the informal transport workers were not speaking to each other. Actually, we had fights, people's vehicles being damaged. So around 2012, 2013, it was so big that one day these borders and taxi minivan just blocked the president while he was driving to his office. And the man was like, "What's the problem?" I said, "No, these guys are So he just gave a decree, stop, countrywide, no collection of revenue. So there had been that animosity, even within the paratransit, because of the informal sectors. The time we started, there were about 6 or 7 associations that would not meet. So we decided to create this forum as part of the study because it was giving us the knowledge, and I'm very happy that my sister in Lagos, in Lamata, you're going to do that study. You need to do a very good study. It will be the best thing you would have done. So we get this forum, and we say, now how do we formulate the structure? We got an independent person to chair it, and that's where Amanda comes in. That would bring trust among all. And as I speak, the 6 associations we started with, 7-6 that we started with 3 years ago, are now formed one confederation. The urban authorities that were not meeting eye to eye, they are now sitting together. Actually, in her remarks, she will tell you even the government, Ministry of Works and Transport, the Kampala City Council, are using that to develop their policy positions. So it is a space like we're seeing where policy design and policy practice are meeting. So that's one key one. The other one is the issue of engagement. And we're looking at it from a meaningful engagement, where actually especially the informal workers look like they start feeling that their voices are being heard. And then we are deliberate in engagement. If it is something around business model, we get owners because they'll talk business. You don't mix a driver, a park administrator with the owner to discuss business model. They will always collide. If it is something on road safety, we get to talk to drivers because they're the ones on it. And actually with the drivers, it's even a bit funny because they'll even advise you on what time to consult them. They'll tell you anything before 9, anything after 3, don't bother calling us because that's peak time. We're working. Anytime I'm not on that steering, it is money. They'll even tell you, don't take us to those fancy hotels of yours. Come here and consult us because the further the consultation venue, we shall not appear. The other one is the passengers. For long, passengers have never been consulted. We have in Uganda what we call a Consumer Protection Association, but that is for other services, not transport. So we have deliberately put in there. And then this other one of imagining that informal transport, which is the case sometimes, is male-dominated. Actually, they are women, and the women are the ones in the most vulnerable positions. So one of the things we did was deliberately tell them, we know they're women. If you don't involve women, we are not continuing. Something like stick and carrot. And now we're getting women coming up, and they come and tell you, I even had a permit. I wanted to drive, but these guys cannot give me space to even get the vehicle. The owner gives you what my sister Fatuma was putting here as the target, the daily target, which you can't meet because it is competitive. So those are, I think, the 2 things I would want to share. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we hear really 4 completely different perspectives, a very different world each time. And I'm going to go back to you first and dig a little bit further. So we understood that the experience of Santiago with paratransit reform is already almost historic. So it's even more interesting for us to hear from a city that has some years of to reflect on that process and to extract some lessons learned. I would be interested to know a little bit more about the enabling conditions that made the reform possible, and especially the role of the state, in particular to facilitate access to finance.
Ya, sí, muy buena pregunta. Quiero partir diciendo que estoy totalmente de acuerdo con lo que dice Gustavo. ¿Por qué nosotros renovamos flota? Es principalmente porque nuestra flota estaba antigua, muy desgastada, teníamos buses de hasta 17, 15, 17 años, entonces el foco siempre es el usuario, ¿ya? El usuario es quien hoy en día merece un bus nuevo, merece un bus de buena calidad, merece un bus donde su viaje al trabajo, a su hogar, sea sea en buenas condiciones y no afecte lo que vaya a hacer al destino, ¿cierto? Eso es lo primero. ¿Cuál es el rol que cumplió el Estado? Importantísimo. Como les dije antes, el bus antes era del operador. Entonces el operador no tenía ningún incentivo a renovarlo, ningún incentivo a comprar un bus nuevo porque se le acababa la concesión en 2 años y prefería seguir con su bus viejo, prefería seguir con, porque si no era una inversión muy grande para después de 2 años ni siquiera saber qué hacer con ella. Entonces, ¿qué se hizo a partir del Estado? Hubo cambios legales. Se creó una ley donde ahora el bus ya no es del operador y el bus pasa a ser afecto a la concesión. ¿Qué quiere decir esto? Que una vez que cambia el operador, el bus pasa al operador nuevo. Y eso es clave porque si no, todos los incentivos van hacia otro lado. Cuando ahora el bus, incluso también pasa cuando el operador no cumple bien. Si yo quiero cambiar a un operador por mal cumplimiento, los buses pasan automáticamente al operador nuevo al que yo quiero que me haga la concesión. Entonces, cuando uno ve que un operador viene cumpliendo mal, que quiere cambiarlo, que su servicio no es bueno, yo le digo, oye, tu concesión va a terminar, estos buses se los paso al otro que va a operar, ¿ya? Y un segundo punto súper importante es el subsidio que tenemos nosotros al transporte público. Esto lo hemos aprendido de muchas partes del mundo, donde creemos que el subsidio es el que fomenta el transporte público, el que le permite tomar las economías de escala generadas en el sistema, y también sirve como garante para hacer el sistema más atractivo para los financistas. ¿Por qué? Porque al final todo el riesgo del operador se quita y es el Estado el que asume todos los riesgos y el Estado asegura el pago, en primer lugar, a quien financia el bus.
Thank you very much. So we're going to jump back to Africa. And so, Rokaya, I would like to ask you to maybe go a little bit deeper on what you started to mention. So you talked about this association to finance urban transport, which also included private operators. And can you tell us more about that and how this type of public-private governance arrangements could support the sustainability of the process?
Oui. Par rapport à l'AFTU, qui est l'association en question, donc elle a joué un très grand rôle dans la professionnalisation, notamment dans la levée des fonds. Comme je le disais tout à l'heure, donc la phase pilote a été financée par la banque. Donc ce prêt avait été rétrocédé à l'État, l'État avait été rétrocédé à l'AFTU, l'AFTU prête à ses opérateurs. Donc, les remboursements issus de ces opérateurs ont permis de constituer un fonds revolving. Et ce fonds revolving est aujourd'hui utilisé comme garantie pour débloquer d'autres fonds pour continuer le programme. Aujourd'hui, nous avons bouclé la 4e phase de renouvellement. Et par rapport à l'AFTU, j'aimerais aussi rappeler que l'État est membre de droit de cette association. Donc, au sein du conseil d'administration de l'AFTU, nous avons l'État représenté par le ministère des Finances, le ministère des Transports et le CETUD. En plus, il y a les autres représentants des GIE. Donc, le programme aujourd'hui a connu un succès en raison de plusieurs facteurs, dont l'appropriation par les opérateurs, le droit de veto de l'État. L'État a droit de veto dans cette association. Et en plus, nous avons octroyé à l'AFTU une autorisation exceptionnelle de faire du crédit bail. Donc, l'AFTU se comporte un peu comme une banque. Et dans le cadre de... avec l'arrivée du BRT et du TER, donc les systèmes de transport de masse, nous sommes en train de migrer dans une seconde phase de cette réforme. Pour le cas du BRT qui est actuellement en cours de construction, nous avons l'AFTU et Dakar Demdik, donc les opérateurs locaux, qui détiennent 30% de la société d'exploitation. Et parallèlement, nous sommes en train de mettre en œuvre un projet de restructuration du réseau qui a pour objectif de déployer des lignes de rabattement. Et ces lignes de rabattement seront exploitées également exclusivement par les opérateurs locaux AFTU et Dakar Demdik. Récemment, nous avons travaillé sur un plan de mobilité urbaine soutenable qui décrit un peu la vision en matière de transport pour Dakar à l'horizon 2035. Donc, il y a plusieurs lignes de TCSP, transport en commun sur site propre, qui ont été identifiées. Et avec l'expérience que les opérateurs, notamment l'AFTU, va emmagasiner avec le BRT, avec la restructuration, ils vont pouvoir se positionner sur, sur l'exploitation de ces transports en commun sur site propre. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Gustavo, in Argentina, I understood that the informal sector is not as large. And however, you mentioned the difficulty to access credit when you were talking earlier. So can you tell us what the government is doing to support on this?
Sí, sí, es como vos decís, lo cierto es que pareciera no ser una cuestión en el momento, por lo menos actualmente, el transporte informal. Por lo tanto, podemos enfocarnos, tal vez, puedo usar mis 15 minutos para hablar en otros temas. Eran 15 minutos, ¿no? Que puedo hablar.
No.
Me levanté muy locuazo y tengo muchas ganas de hablar. Estoy solo en la habitación, es aburrido. Estuve ayer, necesito hablar con gente, necesito expresarme. Así que si tienen tiempo, tal vez 1 hora, 2, puedo llegar a hablar.
5 minutes will be good.
Ok. 10. Bueno, les decía algo que recién la compañera comentaba, la importancia de pensar estas estructuras estatales. Ayer hablábamos un poco de la integración vertical, ¿no? De cómo se integraba los fondos internacionales para llegar a cambiar la situación de la calidad de la vida de las personas. Hoy tal vez podemos hablar un poco de la integración horizontal dentro del gobierno, la importancia de generar estructuras de gobierno que no sean silos, que no sean compartimentos estancos, sino que dialoguen entre ellos. Para un buen sistema de transporte, un buen sistema que atienda las necesidades de la hora, las necesidades de sostenibilidad económica, social y cultural que tiene un nuevo sistema de transporte como que tenemos que repensar en nuestros países, necesitamos el involucramiento de las autoridades económicas, las autoridades ambientales, las autoridades relacionadas con la energía, las autoridades relacionadas con el trabajo y las autoridades relacionadas con el transporte. No es solamente el sector transporte quien tiene que encargarse de eso, porque es una cuestión sistémica. Para poder verlo sistémicamente necesitamos una articulación horizontal muy importante y muy aceitada para que estos sistemas puedan ser pensados. Y 2 reflexiones más cortitas respecto de 2 temas particulares. Pensar, me parece importante pensar que no se trata todo de renovar flotas, no se trata solo de pensar en las características tecnológicas de los vehículos, sino en buscar que los sistemas sean primero planificados inteligentemente. La planificación de la movilidad sostenible es fundamental que la planificación sea de acuerdo a la idiosincrasia de nuestras ciudades y de nuestros países, ¿no? Tratar de buscar en ambos problemas, y acá tal vez pensando también en lo que es tránsito informal, pensar en cómo adaptamos esas estructuras y cómo planificamos de acuerdo a la idiosincrasia, no tratar de traer fórmulas prearmadas y aplicarlas, sino de construir de abajo hacia arriba. Me parece que construir desde las bases, dialogando con las partes, con los empleados, con los transportistas, con todos, creo que eso lo venimos escuchando y es muy importante. Y después pensar también que vamos a tener muy lindos colectivos eléctricos, pero si no pensamos en cómo adaptamos nuestro sistema de transporte a la crisis climática actual que estamos viviendo, vamos a tener que comprar lanchas eléctricas, no colectivos. no nos van a servir los colectivos eléctricos. Tenemos que pensar en sistemas resilientes. Cuando repensemos, cuando construyamos nuevos sistemas de tránsito informal o cuando construyamos nuestros nuevos sistemas de transporte, tenemos que repensarlos en aras a una crisis climática que estamos viviendo hoy, que la vemos todos los días, sequías, grandes tormentas, inundaciones, ríos que bajan, mares que suben, puertos que se ven afectados. Creo que si no pensamos los sistemas de transporte en función de esa realidad, vamos a estar equivocándonos. Yo ayer realmente fue un panel muy interesante, una sesión que hubo sobre adaptación al cambio climático y preguntaba si tenés 100 millones de dólares para invertir en un sistema de transporte, ¿cuánto invertirías en comprar colectivos eléctricos y cuánto invertirías en tratar de adaptarlo al cambio climático? Yo creo que invertiría 90 millones en tratar de adaptarme al cambio climático y solo 10 en tratar de reducir emisiones. Me parece que hoy el problema de nuestras sociedades, de nuestros países, está por cómo seguimos transportando a nuestros compatriotas, cómo seguimos transportando a nuestros compañeros en la peor crisis climática que se viene, como lo hicimos durante el COVID, porque el transporte siguió trabajando durante la etapa del COVID y creo que tenemos que seguir trabajando en eso, ¿no? Creo que tenemos que seguir pensando en los mejores sistemas de transporte en aras a mejorar la calidad de la vida de la gente. Realmente no nos podemos olvidar que el transporte es un derecho fundamental para acceder a otros derechos, al derecho a la salud, al derecho a la educación, al derecho a la alimentación, al derecho al trabajo y muchos otros derechos fundamentales que sin el transporte sería imposible acceder. O sea que me parece importante pensar en ese sentido. Bueno, solamente fueron 10 minutos, así que les agradezco mucho y es un placer pensar con ustedes.
Thank you very much. So, John Mark, back to you. I would like to ask a question about capacity building because we've touched upon it a number of times already yesterday and it came up today again a little bit. And I would like to know, because of this context of fragmentation, it's particularly difficult. So what approaches can, or maybe is the city implementing to achieve scalability in this context of informality and this high fragmentation?
Thank you, sister. The first thing we've done is trying to build on what the studies that FD supported us to do to actually, and that's where sometimes, yesterday I think the UITP General Secretary and today somebody alluded to that, government officials, agencies, sometimes very slow and they frustrate. We did a political economy study and it had a queer, what we would call finding, where we're terming it spoilers and movers. The political economy of Kampala informal transport, spoilers and movers. And unfortunately, the government agencies and departments were all spoilers. And at first, they're not very happy with us, but they found we're talking the truth, and now they come back slowly to Amanda and say, okay, but here now we do it. So what we're trying to do is to change the approach to capacity building, especially of the informal sector. First, we want to get them to work together, because that's a big thing. Even if you talk of any of these initiatives, free renewal, electrification, business model, or whatever, if we don't work about the individual, the behavioral change within there, all this will get back to the same story we're talking about. So we're thinking of first investing in changing their behavior, investing in the way they're looking at what they're doing, that is their livelihood, those are their jobs at stake. Are they willing to go on like that? Then the change starts, and actually we're seeing. Now from there, we identify topics that are dear to them. The other day on Thursday before I left, I met that new umbrella, and I was going to try and find out if they could quickly tell me, okay, give us training on leadership, things we normal, communication, customer care, road safety. They say, no, train us on how we can conduct meetings. I said, what? Yes, how we can hold meetings. Can you imagine? That's what they want. And I was like, oh, okay. So even the way we do the needs assessment has to be tweaked a bit, so that we do the small, less costly interventions that impact on them and help them if they don't identify them. So that's what we're doing, and we're saying we're getting somewhere. The other one is about, in Kampala we also have, before I leave that one, on that one we're having a challenge, and maybe this is where we shall need to be very close to my brother Mustafa and Fatuma and make a business point on why you should support Amanda and the consultative forum. Because as we speak, whereas the government thinks it's a very good thing, nobody's committing to putting funding. We have been right now supported by Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, the German foundation. But last week, they write to me, they have had 50% budget cut. So they're like, for Uganda. So they were like, you have all these things, but now pick two that we can do. I say, do for me the consultative forum. Everything else can wait. So that's the other thing, the funding, which we thought government would easily support. And maybe that's where the issue of the agencies that my brother, the second keynote speaker was saying, are important. We also talked about it since yesterday, and Fatuma really nailed it. In Uganda, in 2014, when the World Bank was supporting pilot study for the BRT, there was a report that was made. And one of the recommendations there was to establish an agency. But the politics, the bill is there, but the politics have not allowed the bill to come to Parliament to become law. So it is there. Because if we had that agency, we wouldn't be doing this, because we know what that agency does. Even now our consultative forum could be just under that. So that's one. The other one is there are things, we have two-wheelers as a big thing in Kampala. We have about conservative figure, around 300,000. And if you calculated, maybe one does about 50 kilometers per hour. In a day, and they're two-stroke engine, they emit a lot. In a day, we could be having close to 1,600 tons of CO in Kampala. We don't have industries, but just, you can see that kind of. So we talked to them, and they discovered a business sense. Because before COVID, we had a French and I think an Israeli engineer that were trying to use Chinese technology to do for us EVs for the borders. We call them borders. And there was a business sense, because if you rode a border, you'd make 3 times the money the other person riding a normal fossil fuel power. So they were beginning to uptake. Unfortunately, at the beginning of this year, and Amanda, please, this is between us and this room. Beginning of this year, because what we're trying to do is getting them into cooperatives and introducing them to the local bank. We have a local bank that is willing to support EVs for the two-wheelers. So first, the COVID comes and the Chinese products have gone high. It is now a bit expensive. 2, the president makes some pronouncement around 2 months ago, so that the government is now going to bring EVs, motorcycles, and is going to give out for free. I say, now, where is this coming from? That's why I'm saying the spoilers. We think a lot, we work with these guys a lot to bring a change of behavior such that they partake. They are business people, they are making money. But you can't say you're going to give them for free, because they started calling me, you guys, you want us to buy, but government is giving us for free. Anyway, that is my take. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So maybe I liked what you what you mentioned about asking them what they wanted to be trained on, and actually being surprised by the answer. And we have this opportunity here. We have in the room SSATP, Euroclimate Plus, Mobilize Your City, and I'm curious to hear from you guys, what are the challenges that remain, and how the kind of needs that you would have from these initiatives? What do you think would be some support that you're not getting currently and that you would need?
I wanted to just say one comment, and I'll zip up. I want to cede my time to my sister there. There's something that I'm thinking that banks and financial institutions should copy from our comrades in South African Development Bank are doing. Banks should start doing business unusual, especially dealing with this, improving the informal sector. Because first of all, there's money. But if, okay, I'm not very against bureaucracy because it makes institutions work, but I want bureaucracy that functions, not bureaucracy that spoils things and breeds corruption. So if banks can, I don't know what business argument you can make with your hierarchy, especially World Bank, EU, and start funding outside the normal funding channels, mechanism. And we start developing these kind of things that are coming up, testing them, piloting them. I think that is the way to go. I always say that BRT is not magic bullet, and I got problems. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Well, it's good because we have pilots coming up, so we've noted your interest. Anyone else wants to answer that question?
Yeah. Sí, yo creo que nosotros tenemos harto. Sorry. Nosotros obviamente tenemos muchos desafíos como sistema de transporte público. Yo creo que estamos en el proceso de renovación de flota, pero así también estamos con muchos otros procesos donde el sistema de transporte público está desafiado. Por ejemplo, recuperar la demanda post-COVID, ¿cierto? Hoy en día en Santiago estamos alrededor de 25% por debajo del nivel de demanda y queremos volver a los niveles anteriores. ¿Por qué? Porque se nos llenó la ciudad de autos. En plena pandemia hubo como una inyección de liquidez y hubo mucha venta de autos, cosa que se proyectó en grandes congestiones en la ciudad, ¿ya? Por lo mismo, recuperar la demanda del transporte público implica que la gente empiece a usarlo, a usar el sistema y poder bajar los niveles de congestión. Lo otro, mejorar la operación. El usuario al final no puede esperar mucho tiempo en el paradero. Mejorar términos de regularidad, tiempos de espera y que nosotros estamos implementando todo un nuevo esquema contractual donde los incentivos están puestos ahí. ¿Ya? Los incentivos donde el operador puede ganar premios en caso de buen cumplimiento, donde el tiempo de espera es fundamental, donde la apertura de puesta es fundamental. Uno de repente no se imagina estas cosas, pero de repente el conductor va y no para en un paradero, sigue nomás, como dice, oh, ya no voy a abrir la puerta. ¿Ya? Son problemas que tenemos nosotros que necesitamos terminar con ellos. Y el último dos últimos grandes desafíos que tienen que ver con más infraestructura es terminar la renovación de flota. Hoy día todavía tenemos buses muy viejos, muy desgastados, muy en malas condiciones, que generan accidentes, donde el mantenimiento es caro, donde no siempre están disponibles para prestar servicio. Entonces necesitamos terminar la renovación de flota y ahora a fin de año se expande nuestra red de metro. Estamos muy felices, pero también tenemos que llegar con metro donde más se necesita. Existen dos proyectos de línea de metro nuevos que creemos que están muy alineados con las necesidades de nuestro usuario, nuestra población, donde nos va a ayudar a hacer Santiago una ciudad más inclusiva y una ciudad donde haya más encuentro entre todos los habitantes de la ciudad.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Oui. Ah, d'accord. Ok, je vais y aller. Donc, par rapport à cette question, Éléonore, je pense que je vais répondre sur 3 points. La première, c'est que dans le mécanisme de financement, aujourd'hui, pour le cas de DECA, nous avons une prime à la casse qui intervient. C'est-à-dire que lorsqu'un véhicule est retiré de la circulation en car rapide ou Ndiagandiaï, donc l'État verse à l'opérateur une prime à la casse. Donc sur Dakar, le processus a duré plus de 15 ans maintenant. Et ce long délai est dû au fait que l'État a du mal à mobiliser cette prime à la casse. Donc nous sommes en train de voir s'il existe d'autres moyens de faire porter en fait cette prime à la casse à un opérateur tiers, peut-être l'opérateur en charge de la casse, pour pouvoir soulager l'État qui fait face à des contraintes budgétaires quelquefois. Et ce serait bien de voir, avec l'expérience du SSATP, de Mobilize Your City et de l'ensemble des partenaires, quels sont en fait les cas d'études qui existent sur ce sujet et comment est-ce qu'on peut relever ce défi. Le deuxième point, c'est par rapport au sujet des aménagements. En 2016, nous avons réalisé une étude de diagnostic sur les aires terminales qui a démontré que presque 70% des terminus pour les bus de l'AFTU et pour les bus du transport artisanal de l'AFTU principalement sont inéquipés, donc pas d'aménagement ou bien c'est des aménagements précaires. Donc les véhicules peuvent passer la nuit dans la rue et nous sommes en train de trouver également des solutions par rapport à ça. La restructuration apporte un début de solution, mais il y a au total plus d'une centaine de terminus donc, à aménager. Et ce serait bien d'avoir le soutien de l'ensemble des bailleurs sur ce sujet. Et un troisième point, c'est la décarbonisation du secteur du transport artisanal. Donc le CETUD s'est inscrit dans une logique de durabilité depuis un certain temps, qui a amené d'ailleurs le changement de nom. CETUD qui passe maintenant de Conseil exécutif des transports urbains de Dakar à Conseil exécutif des transports urbains durables. Donc pour prendre en charge ces questions liées à l'environnement et la décarbonisation est inscrite dans nos politiques actuellement. Voilà, merci.
Merci beaucoup. Je prends bonne note de tout ça.
Bueno,
Yeah. You want to go, Gustavo?
La última y cortita. Estaba pensando sobre los desafíos, ¿no?, que tiene el sector. Creo que un desafío importante es tratar de comunicar bien. Parece tratar de poder trasladar estas ideas, estos desafíos que surgen a partir de la cuestión climática, la cuestión de lo ambiental, y poder trasladar eso al sector transporte bien explicado para que entiendan que hay una oportunidad, que hay una posibilidad de mejorar los sistemas de transporte en función de el relato ambiental, y que lo ambiental no es un monstruo o algo feo, sino que al contrario es un beneficio que tienen que tomar y aprovechar para mejorar los sistemas de transporte. Me parece que es algo interesante. Y lo segundo, asociado un poco a eso, es medir mejor, medir, reportar y verificar, ¿no? Esta idea de MRB, me parece que todavía estamos muy flojos en eso, en la región, a nivel mundial también. Tal vez vemos que medimos el éxito del uso de las bicicletas en nuestros países por la cantidad de kilómetros de ciclovías que construimos, pero no por la cantidad de autos que dejamos de utilizar. Me parece que poder medir mejor, poder tener esas perspectivas, ver cómo impacta realmente la planificación en nuestros países, en ver cómo impacta en la reducción de accidentes, en la reducción de costos al final del día, poder monetizar, ¿no? Poder medir cuántas las inversiones que vamos a estar recibiendo finalmente repercuten en menos camas en los hospitales, porque mejora la salud de las personas. Me parece que eso es una asociación que necesitamos hacer para conseguir mejores y más inversiones para el sistema de transporte. Porque si nosotros explicamos que si invertimos en la planificación, que si invertimos en mejores vehículos, que si invertimos en mejor tecnología, al final del día vamos a estar ahorrando en muertes, en servicios de salud, me parece que tal vez conseguimos que puedan venir mayores y mejores inversiones al sector transporte. Así que poder hacer ese nexo, poder medir bien y poder asociar realmente cuánto se ahorra invirtiendo en el sistema de transporte, previniendo y no teniendo que finalmente atender los resultados de una falta de planificación, de falta de buenos sistemas de transporte, me parece que es importante para lograr mejorar los sistemas, generar más inversiones para nuestros operadores y para los operadores del sistema de transporte. Así que eso creo que son dos desafíos que son importantes en el sector.
Thank you very much. We have a couple of minutes left, so I would like to open the floor if you have any questions in the room. And then after that, we'll move into a break so you can continue the conversation directly with all the panelists. Yes, please. So actually, we have Amanda in the room. John Mark presented you earlier, but I can say Amanda Ngabirano is chairperson at the National Physical Planning Board in Uganda. And we weren't sure if you were going to be available for the panel, but please go ahead, because it's nice to hear also your perspective on the Kampala experience.
Thank you very much. My name is Amanda Ngavirano. I'm happy that Johnny Mark was here to represent the process that we are in. It's a complex process, but it's unavoidable. He mentioned that some things should remain in this room, but I cannot guarantee that. So there are no more walls in communication and information sharing in the world. The process of uniting the taxi operators, who are the 14-seaters, has really been a challenge to government. And thanks to this process that we are in, government now is seeing that there is a bridge towards getting them regulated, professionalized, supported. And it started with trust building. At first, government was looking at them as enemies of change, you know. So we started by telling them, these are partners for change. And 60% of passengers in the city are being carried every day by this system, which government calls informal. It's actually not informal from this process. We realize that they have structures, they are very organized, they have associations, they have stage leadership, and each vehicle employs about 5 people. John Mark, I hope I'm right. Those are 5 families. So looking at the BRT, it was a big threat, and they didn't like to hear anything about the BRT, the buses, the trains, because one bus was going to require probably 1 driver, and then you have an automated ticketing system, and then the other 4 people have no jobs. So they were completely angry from the first meetings. But we told them, you see, the city is growing so fast, the passenger demands are high, and you cannot serve the city in the next 20 years. So you need to improve your business model. You need to change what you're doing and get more professional, otherwise you'll be kicked out of the business. So we bridged the gap between them and government by taking them for capacity building in Cape Town. And from that time, their relationship with government improved. And government respects them, but they also respect government as a regulatory entity. They know that they need government. But the most successful thing of this is that government has to stop this habit of disrespecting people who are filling in the gap of service provision. Because government has failed to do it, and these people are doing it. It's business, but they are doing it. The other thing that has come out is that government is asking this process, and I'm the chairperson of that process, can you please continue helping us? Because so far we see some results. Let's continue this process. So if they need a meeting with the taxis, they ask me, can you arrange a meeting? They cannot call them themselves. So it shows you that they have power, and I think governments have to be smart and bring them on board, work with them, and support them. And then lastly, we need to learn from each other, from Cape Town, from Lagos, from Kampala, from Kigali, because people relate better with that instead of learning from Amsterdam, learning from Berlin, learning from Barcelona. It does not work. It's completely different. And we have also learned that it's better to be slow and more realistic and more sustainable than being too fast and too ambitious to achieve anything in public transport improvement. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please, one more question.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Abimbola Akiajo from Lamata, and thank you very much for a very informative session so far. Honestly, I need to know where your room is. Maybe I can help you out with conversation. I just wanted to talk about what governments apparently in Dakar are doing, and I think other in Chile. This procuring the buses, giving it out, and hopefully reflating from whatever you get from it. Now, Lagos has done this twice, and every time we seem to get scuppered. And the reason is the cost of transportation cannot be huge because of what people earn. Even from what we charge, we still get slaughtered. That the cost is too high. So recently we put out some buses, first and last mile buses. We are running a scheme whereby the informal transport people bought into it, and they brought 20%, government paid for the buses in full, and we are running a payment system that says that we collect all the money and we give it to them at the end of the week. Lagos now has a payment system, end of, right? And we had given them like a 3-month moratorium, am I correct? Yes. So after that, they were supposed to start repaying. But because of this competition, I think Amanda mentioned it just now, that the minute government intervenes in their business, there is a complete, almost quarrel. They don't want you, they don't, and Lagos has a very strong relationship with them. All they want you to do, what we found, is just give us the buses, don't give me a payment system, I'll pay when I want to, and that's it. And historically, we've done that. The very first BRT was actually given to them as well. And they paid. The question is not repaying the buses, but it's refleeting the buses. Because what happens then is, you've paid for the buses, but you've not done any refleeting. So we're back to square zero. We're back to ground zero. So every time government comes and does this intervention, and they want you to just give them the bus. And we've done that. This is the 3rd intervention that Lagos is doing. We bought 1,000 large buses. We asked the union to form a cooperative, and they're actually running on the BRT. We have 3 operators on the BRT. We invited other private sector, and that's why the last time we mentioned 30% of our buses are being run by the informal sector. Now, the one thing we note, and we must give to the informal sector, is the level of expertise that they bring to the table. So you must always see the positives, and then we cannot romanticize the problem. Because they, in all fairness, are about the best operators on this route of BRT that we have. But the challenge I have with them is that when we do that, and I'm really interested in the Dakar situation because you seem to have been sustaining it for years, and whereas Lagos has not been able to. And it's not about sustainability from the government not willing, it's sustainability from not being able to find the money to refleet the buses. Now, I also want to say that you can't say it's their fault completely. The first one I would say is their fault completely because the economic situation did not drastically change. But the last 2 that we're doing now, we've done what do you call them? First and last mile buses. So the small buses, so that that's what they're used to operating. We bought those and they have keyed into that. And then the high capacity buses, those ones too, we have, that one we actually gave to them. We didn't ask for any money. And we were asked, it was more like a management contract. You keep working and we take a certain percentage out of it. And in fairness, we started off taking 30% out of their earnings. And they were happy because everything was working fine. But the problem we now got, diesel when we started was 180 naira. In less than a year, diesel became 840 naira per liter. Now you can see what that means. It means suddenly the state can't take, so the subsidy that the state was giving them was the fact that we literally gave them the buses for free. We were taking no money. There is no money now for refleeting, and I have 1,000 buses that are working. And the possibility of refleeting those buses would mean that I have to go out again and find another set of funds to do that. Now, we tried, the third one we're doing now are the smaller buses. And still, again, we're working with informal sector and private sector, because in Lagos, we really don't operate buses as government. We started off, and these ones are petrol buses. And the petrol buses, we started Petrol was 165 as of last week, just before I left Lagos. Petrol became 511, and yet again, all the calls I've been having since I've been here, I'm so glad I'm here today. Honestly, this week, I'm so glad I'm out of Lagos, because the whole of Lagos is going crazy as to how much will transport cost. The informal sector have done exactly what they will do, because they are in business, like my brother Max says. They are in business, they are filling a gap, but they're also in business. So the buses that the state bought, we have been trying to manage not to increase the prices, but the private sector have to increase prices. So what does that mean for us again? Yet again, we've done this investment, and there's no way we can see to claw back money. So what I am interested in is, how do we as government continue to do this and not begin to speak the word subsidy? Because it looks like the only way we can see to refleeting our buses will be subsidy, either by us shutting your eyes and saying, I'm going to write off those buses when they're dead and I will just find new monies to put it, or is there something we can take away from this meeting today that will help me to see how we can do refleeting without constantly dipping hands into government coffers? Thank you.
Thank you. So we're actually a little bit over time, and so just to be mindful that you all get a break before the next session, I think we will not answer here to this question, but I would encourage you to continue the conversation now during the break. And I would like to thank everyone, all of the panelists and the presenter for this great session. Thank you very much.
Just for the break, I think that we deserve, all of us deserve a bit of a break, and enjoy a bit this sunny moments in Barcelona. So we are having the coffee break, and just in the outside, go out from the room and turn on the right, and then we will have this some refreshment there. Just where I think that we are having 20 minutes of break. Please, we are a bit away from the time, so 1 minute, 20 minutos, 20 minutes, please.